Hey, what's up? This video I'll be showing you guys how to fix your Samsung washing machine if it's not spinning. The first thing you'd need to do is open the door of your washing machine. You want to make sure that you're checking to see if you can spin the drum freely by hand. So you open the door, and then this steel bit inside, if you can turn it by hand, then the problem might be like with the brushes or something else, or the pump. I've got other videos in my playlist below on how to fix those issues like not draining or 3E error. But for this particular one, this one's not spinning because the drum is jammed, because the spider at the back is broken. So if you're looking to fix your washing machine that's not spinning properly, or the bearings are gone in it, the spider is gone in it, this is the video where we're going to do that. Now your model might look different, but it's the same thing inside, so it's the same process as we go along. And if you ever get lost or have any questions about your model, just leave a comment in the comment section below. Whenever your washing machine is bouncing this drum around or making some weird noises, it has to do with the spider and the bearings as well. So just to give you a bit of context, in there, that drum, that metal drum, is held at the back by this spider. They call it a spider because it's sort of got spider legs. So this has got like 3 feet on it. So 1, 2, 3. So what happens is over time, this thing develops cracks here and here and somewhere, so much that the drum is not sitting properly in these 3 angles. You can buy this for about 50 bucks, and the bearings will cost you maybe about 20, 30 bucks, and then your washing machine will be as good as new. I'll show you guys how the old spider would look like, because that will give you a better idea as to how bad it is in there. So you definitely need to change this. It's not too hard to do. If you've got a couple of tools, you can do it over maybe an afternoon, and I will be showing you, going with you step by step into how to do it. So inside your washing machine, it's like this instead of being like this. So we need to replace that, and that will sort out your problems. So what we're going to do first is we're going to remove the top cover of the washing machine, the lid, which is at the top. It is held in place by 2 screws. So we're going to remove this bit. So 1 screw here and another one over here. And we'll remove that and move on to the next stage. To remove the top cover, you need to push this lid back. You push it back and up, and it comes out. Just like that. Beautiful. And set it aside. Next thing you're going to need to do is pull the soap drawer. We're going to need to take it all the way out because we need to access 2 screws that are behind it. In order to remove it all the way, you're going to need to access a clip in there. So there's a clip in there, if you have a look just over here. Just push that down and pull this out. It comes all the way out. Then the screws that we are after are these 2, 1 and 2. Remove those. At the top of this panel, there's 3 screws holding this panel in place. We need to remove this panel. So there's 1, 2, and 3. Remove those. I know this part is the trickiest bit for most people. When you've removed those 3 screws, where you took off those screws, remember 1, 2, and 3, and there's tabs all over. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tabs in total. So the idea is that you pull this up and out. So you want to start from the left going to the right, pull it up and out just a little bit, just like that, up and out just a little bit, just enough for it to get out of the groove. And it shows you on the arrows, it's got arrows on it as well that show you what to do. So up and out. As you can see, when you get to the last one, it pops out. What's holding this whole thing in place would be, there's some tabs at the bottom that you need to pull it out. And don't be too scared to break it. It won't break. Just pull it out just like that. And we're just going to put that to the side. Let's remove the wiring behind this. So in order to remove the wiring behind this, it's pretty simple. There's some screws that hold this cover. So there's a cover here that's hold this thing. Ideally, I don't think you need to remove this as long as you're careful with it when you're moving the washing machine around when we do remove the drum. So to make our life easier, we're going to leave that on there, and we're just going to be careful when you move around the washing machine so that we don't squash this board, and we should be right. So let's just put that onto the side, save ourselves a bit of time. So our whole idea is that we want to remove this whole drum. So inside this plastic drum is where you've got the metal drum, which is held in place by that spider that I showed you guys earlier. The next thing we want to do is we want to remove this panel, which is held in place by two screws. You got one screw here, and there's another screw over there. And then at the bottom, there's three other screws holding this whole thing in place. But before we do that, you want to open the door. And behind that seal, there is a ring that's holding that seal in place. In order to remove that ring, you need a flathead screwdriver that will help you to pop it out, and that'll be out of the way. With your flat screwdriver, you're going to reach in the groove here, just move it along until you feel some vibrations, because we're looking for where the spring is, and I can feel it here next to that door hinge, and you just need to simply pry it out, and that's him is out. Just pry it out, just like that. I like to put this back inside there so that I don't lose it, because if you lose that, the washing machine's going to start leaking. Beautiful. Just put the seal sort of inside there. Close the door. In terms of, in the corner there's a filter. Just check in there if there's anything holding. There's nothing holding that, so that'll be right. I can leave it just like it is. Close it up. Another thing you want to do is also maybe empty this filter before you take the drum off, so that any water that is left in the washing machine comes out, and it's not going to create a mess when you're trying to fix all the other things. We're going to remove the three screws holding this at the bottom. To remove those, there's a simple trick which you can do. Move your washing machine a bit forward so that you can lay it back on an angle. So when you tilt it back like that, you can lean it back against your wall, and then that way you've got easier access to these three screws at the bottom. Those three screws are what's holding the panel to it. So you got 1, 2, 3 screws. You need to take those off, and as I say, just lean it towards the wall, or if you've got someone there to help you, they can hold it while you take those 3 off. When you're done with those 3 at the bottom, then take off these 2 at the top, one on the left and the one on the right. Easy as. To remove this, you simply need to pull it up. Just be mindful that there's a door switch harness attached to this, so don't go and try to yank it off before disconnecting that. So lift it up and to the side. If you have a quick look in there, you can see that in the corner there is a harness that we need to disconnect. In order to disconnect that, just hold the back of it. There's a clip which you pull down and it comes out. Then put your door to the side. Beautiful. We're halfway there. So as you can see, it's not that hard. We're almost there. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove these weights in the side. And these weights help your washing machine to balance. The other thing you want to do when you're fixing your washing machine like this now is you want to check to make sure that these are still intact. There's no concrete coming off the washing machine. That will also damage your washer. So make sure you check the concrete is still intact. There it is. It's not that hard. We're almost there. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove this concrete, these counterweights, the left side one and the right side one. You're going to need a 13mm socket on a driver, which will be useful for taking these off. Otherwise, if you don't, you can just put it on a ratchet and ratchet them off. They're not very tight on there, so it's not that hard. 13mm socket. 1, 2, 3. To take it off, just simply hold the bottom and the top and pull it out and carefully put it to the side. You don't want to drop it, otherwise you'll damage the concrete on it. And trust me, these things are not easy to find. If these get damaged, your washing machine will not balance properly and will just always bounce around a lot. At this stage, what you want to do is you might want to remove the door seal, but there is really no need to do that. So if you are uncomfortable, maybe you can remove it. There's just a Phillips head screw there. You undo it anti-clockwise and the whole seal comes out. But as for me, I'm all right with it. At the top here, there is a screw. We're going to need to remove this water dispenser. So Phillips head screw out, and there's a clamp holding a pipe here. You just pull that clamp and pull the pipe down, easy as that. And then just push this drawer back. There's some tabs holding it, but before you pull it back, you want to push this thing to that side at the back, to the right side, and push it out, because there's a couple of tabs holding it, and that's it. It's out just like that. There's also another clip on here which you want to remove because it's got a pipe on it, and this can just hang on the side there. There's no need for you to replace that. Down here at the front, what we want to change here, or what we want to take off, is these pipes. Anything holding the washing machine onto the body, we want to take it off. So we're going to get our Phillips head screwdriver and move down there and remove a couple of things. As you can see down there, there is this Phillips head screw that to undo, you have to do it clockwise. I know it doesn't make sense, but that's how they made it. To undo it, do it clockwise, and that will undo this clamp, so you can easily remove this drain pipe. But before you do that, you want to make sure that you disconnect this pipe as well. So there's a clamp holding there. We want to take off that clamp so that this comes off nicely. So if you reach at the back there, there'll be two tabs. If you're not strong enough, grab a pair of vice grips or pliers and pull them together, and you can pull this out and set him down nicely, just like that. Another thing you want to undo is this bit here, because it's attached to the drain, and you want to make this drum as free as possible so removal is easy. So at the front here, we're almost done. The two things you need to take off are these feet, these shocks, Oh, these are shock absorbers. This is what controls your washing machine jumping up and down. We need to remove them using a number 13 socket, and there'll be another one on the other side to remove that. To remove that, you can grab a socket with an extension on it, like this one, and put it in. There's holes that they put in there that will accommodate your tools in order to remove that. So just put your 13 on a gun and you can easily take that off. I mean easy, but it's a bit tight, so it just depends how good your gun is. My one is weak, so because I've added all those extensions, it's not allowing me to properly take that off. So I'm gonna use a normal ratchet, because you just need to take that off, that tension that's on it for now, and then you can use your gun. So lefty loosey, righty tighty. And as it's in there tight, woof, it's in there tight. Same goes for the right side. There is a hole here which you can insert your extensions through. If you don't have any extensions, you can reach in there with a small ratchet like this one and try to do it by hand. But this extension won't cost you much at the hardware store, so I'd say it's definitely worth it. These are pretty tight in there. There we go. Crack that off. Good. Whew, nice. And once it's loose, pretty easy to put your gun on there, and you can easily remove that screw. And it's out. What you want to do when you remove those screws is you want to make sure that you fold these inside, push them in as much as you can, and fold them inside. Oof. And when you do that, the washing machine's going to want to come forward a bit. One, because you remove the weights, and two, because these feet also hold the washing machine drum in place. So the only things left holding it are the springs at the top. So don't be alarmed when you see it move forward. It's just it finding its new place since you've removed all the supports that it had. Now that we've removed the front things, now we move on to the back, where there is a back cover that we need to take off. So that silver back that you see, you need to remove that, because behind that you can access the motor and all the other parts in there that we need to disconnect before we take off the washing machine. To remove this back cover, you need to take off 4 screws. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and that will be it. To remove it, simply pull the top bit up, like pull it out. This is flexible and it comes out. As you can see, like the washing machine has sort of leaned towards the front. What I want to do at this stage is sort of remove the wiring that is attached to the heating and the motor. So let's go ahead and do that. So this can move around freely now. Just be careful as you move these components. So you want to remove this terminals connected to the heating. If you've got a second person, they can help you to do this. And you need some cutters to remove those zip ties. There's a zip tie here which you need to remove in order for this thing to be free. Before I take off all that stuff, you need to remove this motor so there's less weight on the washing machine as well. Before you take off the motor, there's this wiring, the harness, that you can just sort of pull towards you. You might need a bit of force to take it out, but eventually it's gonna come out. There you go. So that motor is disconnected now, that harness. To remove it, you need to remove these 2 screws. There's 2 bolts, which are 10mm sockets. So you just get a 10mm socket and you can remove that. Now I know some of these won't have the motor on them, they'll have a direct drive motor, but the process is almost the same. try to post a video on how to do that. But take off the zip ties. The idea is to disconnect anything that's holding this to the chassis, and this wiring is also holding this thing to the chassis, because you don't want to go to pull it and then you find stuff still stuck there. And of course there's another earth wire here which we need to disconnect, and there we go. That thing is free now. The only thing holding it is the springs at the top, so we'll remove those in a minute. Before removing the drum, just make sure that everything is nice and loose, that there's nothing holding that to the drum. And as I can see, there's a tube here that goes to the sensor, the pressure sensor, the water level sensor. So just pull that out slowly, taking care not to break the housing to it. There's a spring holding it, and once you take that out, that'll simply just slide out. Once we've done that, we'll need to lean the washing machine towards us, and we're going to lie it flat on the ground. I know this is going to look a bit hard, but it'll save your back for you not to stress trying to like lift this whole thing on your own. But if you've got two people, you can always try to lift this thing off, but I've always found that the easier way to do this is to lean it towards the ground and then take it out. So what you do then, make sure that you don't drop this board on and scratch it. So you just lean this forward to the front. Before we do that, actually, we're going to remove something that a lot of people tend to break. What you want to do now is, at the top here, there's this pressure sensor. You want to disconnect the wiring first, because we want to take this out in case we bump into it. We don't want to damage it, so just remove that. Then to remove this, there will be some clips at the back of this chassis. So in this chassis in the back, there'll be some clips. You can feel them when you put your hands behind it, one on the left, one on the right. So you sort of like pry them out and push it out. So to make it clearer, have a look at that. So you can see it goes in like that. So they're sort of hooking into it with these. So I just remove this in case I break it while I'm taking off the drum. We're about halfway there when we've got all this stuff out. We're almost ready to pull out the washing machine. And as I said before, there's only 2 springs left holding the washing machine in place. So let's go ahead and remove and we're going to put this washing machine on its face. It's going to lie on its face, and then that way we can remove the drum. What you want to do now is gently tilt the washing machine towards the front, remembering not to drop it too suddenly. And if you've got a second person there to help you, that will help a lot. And then just keep this in place, putting it down, putting it down, putting it down, slowly putting it down like that. Beautiful. As you can see, everything just goes down nicely, and it's down just like that. To finish the removal process, there's 2 springs holding this thing in place. So one on the left and one on the right. So you simply lift it out, and best to take it out. Just remember the orientation. I'll walk you through it when you close it up. If you remove it, take it out of the way. That way it won't be obstructing you as you try to take things apart. Just gonna let that lie like that. Beautiful. So the idea here is we're gonna pull this frame up while leaving this lying down. That way we're not straining ourselves with the weight. So you're simply taking your time to pull this up. Pull it up, making sure you're clearing all the other things. Take your board, it is out just like that. Beautiful. You can see it's separate now. That's the frame that holds the washing machine, and that's the drum. So we're going to pull it apart. Now at the back here, we're going to need to remove this nut, this bolt that's holding this spindle to the shaft. To remove it, you're going to need a 17 socket and a hammer. So put the socket here. What I like to do is usually put a socket and then maybe put a screwdriver here so that this doesn't move as you hit this. If you've got a good impact gun, you can just go and that'll come out. But I don't have one at the moment, so I'll just usually hit that until it sort of comes out. There you go. It's hard in there because they use Loctite to lock it in. So don't be too alarmed when yours is too hard. Just get a hammer and whack it out. Be careful not to hurt yourself because these edges are sharp as well. So there you go. We've got this out. Remember to keep all these screws, nuts and bolts, because you're going to need them. And that's the spindle. This is where your belt goes, and then the motor is turning around to turn the washing machine. So keep this nice and safe. Next stage is we're going to flip this drum on its other side so that we can access the screws that separate the drum. But before we do that, there's one screw here that we need to undo. All these screws that, because this drum is in two parts, as you can see, the top part and the bottom part. To undo them, you need a 10mm socket, which you'll need to put on a socket, on an extension, which will help you to undo it. There's a lot of these screws. Make sure you keep all of them because you'll be needing them. So I just took out that one screw, and then I'm going to flip this thing over for us to access the back part. There we go. Now there are a lot of these screws. So the screws that we're taking off on this, there's bolts that we're taking off on this, are these ones. So they'll be all around. Just remove them as you go around. Take your time, remove all of them, and then we can lift up the drum. When you got all those screws out, what you want to do then is lift this off. It just comes out like that. Easy. And there you go. You got your drum, and this is the upper part, and that's the lower part. You want to just put that to the side and make sure you're not damaging the seal on it. We need to separate this bit from this bit. The only thing that's holding them is the spider shaft. And what I usually do is I usually put it on its side. If it's not too damaged, I put it on its side like that and spray some WD-40 or something that will lubricate that, and then just hit this out. There you go. And then just keep pulling it out. There we go. All right. Now, to understand the damage that is done on this thing is really, really bad. So you can see this used to be one piece. So that and this bit here on the other drum used to be one piece. So that's why mine was stuck, and probably that's why yours is also bouncing around and is making a lot of noise. So this piece right here should be like that. Instead, the other bit stuck on there and it's broken. It's broken off. Now what causes this, you'd say? Number one culprit, too much softener, too much soap. Another culprit, washing blankets and doonas in these things. They're not made to wash blankets and doonas in here, but people go ahead and do it anyway, which doesn't help the washing machine. So just hit that out and it comes out. Beautiful. And as most of you can see, that is it. That's the missing piece from these other bits. At this next stage, what we want to do is we want to remove this and install the new spider, but there's 3 bolts still holding these in place. We need to get rid of those. Now they've got Loctite in them. The first thing you need to do is get yourself a blowtorch or a portable one. You can get one at your local hardware store, very cheap, because we just want to heat it up a bit to melt that Loctite and make it a bit easier for us to remove that bolt. So just heat it up nicely until you can feel it's a bit hot. Then you can remove that bolt. If you've got an impact gun, that will do. If you don't, you can use a ratchet, which can help, but just be mindful that this is going to be hot, so don't burn yourself in the process. So to take it off, heat it up because it's nice and hot. Yeah, probably heat it up for about 3 to 4 minutes. Then make sure it's nice and tight. And hot. There. Yeah. Very hot. All right, get in there, get something to hold it, and out he comes. Ooh, very hot. So get yourself an impact gun. So go ahead and do the same for all the other 2 remaining screws. Make sure you heat it up nicely so that you melt all that Loctite. Otherwise, this is going to be very hard to do. If you don't have an impact gun, you can always use the hand wrench ratchet. Make sure that it's a nice good one and it's a long one, and the socket as well is nice and grippy and is not worn inside. Otherwise, you'll have trouble taking this out. So what you want to do before you put in the new spider, you want to make sure that you clean all this gunk off and make sure that it's nice and clean, and then you can put in the new spider. Now to find the new spiders, you need to put in your model number of your washing machine into eBay. Usually starts with WF, mine's at WF1752 WPC. It'll be on the top right hand corner. There'll be some numbers there that will say it. If you're unsure about what your model is, leave me a comment in the comment section below and I will help you out to find the spider that you're after. So this one's the one for mine. So to install this, you simply line it up. It's pretty easy with the triangles. Sometimes it takes a bit of time to really nicely line it up because you've sort of got to put one in and then put the other one in, and then it will nicely go in. I'd say before hammering anything in, maybe just make sure all the holes are lined up. See, that's lining up, that's going to go straight down, and the same goes for the other holes. Otherwise, you will have something that is a bit hard to get the bolts in. So when it's in there, just put the bolts back in. Might want to put a bit of Loctite on there as well if you've got some lying around the house, and make it nice and tight. Probably about put 60 Newton meters if you've got a torque wrench, but as long as it's nice and tight, you'll be good. Alrighty, so that's the spider done. Part 1 of this fix is done. Next thing we're going to do, I usually like to change the bearings when I change the spider as well, because you're already in there. If you change the spider, change the bearings as well, because they would have come under a lot of pressure as the spider broke on the old one. So it's usually best to change them together. That way your washing machine will have a whole lot of new life left into it. It'll basically be like a brand new washing machine minus the electronics. This is the fun part. The bearings are inside this thing, so you won't see them from here, but that's the outer seal, and then the bearings are in here. You've got the inner bearing and then the outer one on the other end. Very easy to get out. I recommend you spray some WD-40 in there or some penetrant to easily help you to pull it out. You're going to need a chisel and a hammer to hammer those out. But if your bearings are okay, there's no need to change them. To do the bearings, what I usually like to do is go on a nice hard surface like a concrete slab, like on your driveway. That way you have minimum effort in taking these bearings out. Grab yourself 2 planks of wood, and I usually like to put one on this side so that this is not sitting on the concrete. You don't want this to be sitting on the concrete. You want it to be sitting against something so that it doesn't take most of the shock. Otherwise, you'll break the drum. So lift it up, put something underneath. Yeah, some wood will do. There we go. And now you need to grab your chisel. I'm gonna hit out that outer one first, and that way we've got more access to this inner one. Take care not to damage this seal, because we're gonna reuse that. That looks good, still seals properly. So try as much as possible to keep that nice and intact. All right, spray some WD-40 in there. That should take care of all that. Make it nice and soft. Grab your hammer. Now it's gonna get a bit noisy, so you put it at an angle. You don't put it straight because it's gonna go straight through. Put it at an angle so that you're hitting the outer race of that bearing that is at the bottom, and you just go whack, whack, whack. Make your way around, and easily falls out, just like that. Is out. Just like that, and I can already feel it. I've been hitting it, but I can already feel that it's a bad one. So good thing that we're changing that, putting in a new one. All right, beautiful. To take out this inner one, you're gonna need to flip this on its side like that, and you want to make sure that the heater, because there's a heater that protrudes on this side, you want to make sure that that's not hitting the ground. Otherwise you're going to damage it as you whack that bearing out of place. So if you've put some WD-40, should come out now. It's nice and neat. Now remember, you just do it in a central motion, like round and round and round. You just don't go for one spot, otherwise it's going to get a bit out of shape, and then it will be hard to get out of there. Beautiful. And then they're both out, just like that. You can see the nice seal here, it's still intact. That's what you want. To put in the new ones, it's pretty easy. You'll probably start with the inside one, then that way it'll go nice and tight in there. So you start with the inside one. We're gonna start putting this one in. To install the new bearings, you start with the inside one, and I usually like to just sort of ease it in. You want to make sure it's nice and clean in there before you put the new bearing, otherwise it won't sit in there properly. So here we go. Usually what you can do with this one, the beauty is you can take your old bearing, put it on there, and then you can just hit this old one as you put in the new one. Just make sure it's not cocked, otherwise it's not going to go in there nicely. And as you're putting it in there, you want to make sure it's nice and balanced, that you're not just whacking only one side. And sometimes it helps just to use the chisel, and use the flat bit, and hit on the outer bit of the bearing, not on the inner bit, because the inner bit is a bit soft. You'll damage it. Now when this bearing's sitting in nice, we want to make sure that it's in all the way, even past that housing. And when it's in, you can actually feel it, because then you'll be hitting against the edge of whatever's holding this. So you want to make sure you do it until you can feel that the bearing is all the way. Otherwise, it's not going to work properly. So just hit it on the outside, making sure that you're not hitting the inside until it goes all the way in. And then we've got the new bearing for the outside, and we'll put that in. For the outside one, just tap it in, gently tapping. Yep, that's definitely in. Beautiful. And you can just feel it nicely turn. Remember to put back the inner seal. I usually like to do this now so that I don't forget about it. So, because if you forget about it, this thing's gonna start leaking. Now obviously you wanna make sure that it's nice and clean before you put it in there. Otherwise this thing is going to start leaking. All right, so it's clean on the outside, so that should do it. You might need a bit of tapping. So tap it in. Don't overdo it. Beautiful, done. So we'll start putting everything back together. You're gonna need to grab yourself a tube of silicone with a dispenser, because right around this edge, there's a seal in this tub. You need to make sure that we create a nice, perfect seal around that. So if this can stand, so just around there, inside there where it's black, there's a seal there already, but we need to put some silicone there so that it can really, really be nice and secure, and then we'll know that everything will be hunky-dory in there. So grab yourself a tube of waterproof silicone that will create a nice sealant. You don't need to create a thick bead, just a little bit. Just going around, making sure that it's getting to all, especially down here, because that's where most of the water will be and there'll be a lot of pressure there. So you absolutely need to make sure that there will be no leaks on the washing machine. Otherwise, you're opening it up again, and that's a lot of work. So just take your time putting in that silicone, making sure it's nicely in there, creating a nice seal, and we should be good. There we go. So once you've got that in there, and I made a nice seal with your silicone, just have a look around, make sure there's nothing, like no dirt or anything in there. And then you need to put the inner drum back into the basket, and that way the washing machine will almost be ready. So should just go straight in nicely like that. Put some grease on the shaft, that should help it a bit, but other than that, it should be good. we're going to put our upper part of the tub back in. So just grab it, make sure it's nice and clean as well, making sure there's no dirt. That will prevent it from making a nice seal. And you can just proceed to putting it back on the drum. So nice and easy. So everything just lines up. Make sure it all just lines up. No need to force anything in there. I just go in there, snaps in there. And now we're going to put back all those bolts that we took off. We're going to nicely put them back. And it's pretty simple. The same way you took them off is the way you put them back. Making sure not to over tighten them, as this is tightening into plastic. You will break it if you over tighten it. But just make sure that you've got it tight enough. So there it is. You want to make sure that all your bolts are nice and tight, that this thing's not going to come apart once you've got it back in the washing machine. And the silicone also helps to put everything together. And I'm going to turn it over, just remembering to put back that bolt that we took out first, which is on the opposite side. So you're going to need to put that back in place, and then we should be good to start putting it back in the chassis. So, oh, I forgot another one there. So you want to make sure that all your screws are in, otherwise this thing will crack open like an omelette. Now when ensure that you've put all the screws back, it's back in one piece. You want to flip it over so that it lies face forward, so that the feet are at the bottom, almost the same way you took it out, sort of like that. The shocks and the feet are that way. And then you're going to take your frame, your washing machine frame, and you're going to put it back over the drum, so that way it can just sit on top of the washing machine. So we are going to take this. If you have a second person helping you, that can help as well. But if you're on your own, just take your time and gently just lead it in, making sure you don't hit on anything on the way down. Just like that. Beautiful. And it's almost a washing machine again. So all we're doing is we're just doing everything that we did before in reverse. And remember to take your retaining springs, your springs that hold the drum. So these go on in opposite ways. Make sure you put it in opposite ways. Don't just hook up the drum. You can see how these are both pointing towards us, towards the camera. One needs to be pointing down, like so they hook in an opposite way. If I can have a side view, like that. So they should be hooking like that instead of hooking both the same way like that. So make sure either way you put it, make sure one way is hooking facing down, facing the front, and then the other one is hooking facing the back of the washing machine. That will help us to get the washing machine to balance properly. We are halfway there. So what we're going to do next is we're going to lift the washing machine up, and what you want to do then is also hold the drum while you're doing that, because it still hasn't really caught onto the washing machine. So you're just helping it get up, 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 up. It's getting. Whoop. You want to make sure that it's holding on there nicely. Sometimes it might slip out. Make sure these springs are still connected, and there we go. Beautiful. It's on there. Obviously the first thing I want to put back is the feet, so that it's not standing at this awkward angle with the drum facing up. I want the drum to be nicely seated. So you're going to need to grab your bolts that were holding the shocks onto the frame and reconnect them first. Yeah, so it's almost there. We've reconnected the feet of the washing machine. Now we're going to go to the back of the washer and reconnect everything else there at the back. And then that way we've only got the front left, which is pretty easy. So if you can turn your washing machine around, it's obviously a bit lighter now because we haven't put back the counterweights. And that will help us. So there we go. So at the back here, what you want to do is you want to reconnect all the electrical stuff that's supposed to be here. So obviously you've got your heaters and this is pretty easy to remember. If you remember, the blue one goes on the far right, red one goes on the far left, earth in the middle, of course, because it's earth. And then there was another earth here that's connected to the drum that you connect. That's the green and yellow wire. You connect it back. So the easy thing about this is that everything we took off, you can just rewind and you can see it. So there you go. Everything just goes in together. There's no way you mess this up, because if a plug doesn't belong somewhere, it won't plug in, it won't work. So that's the beauty of this. So just take your time, making sure you're securing all these wires. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to reconnect the motor back, and that way we won't forget about it. So putting the motor back is as simple as you got to line up these two front feet in there, and then that will be easy as. So actually these two, and then this is on the back. So the key with this is to take your time and not get frustrated while you're trying to put all this stuff back. Otherwise you make mistakes and you forget parts. So with this one, you want to just sort of put it inside the right way, of course. This bit goes to the back, and then you're going to sort of lift it up a bit at the back there and push it back. So you could have a second person have a look for you in the front there to make sure that it's all nicely lined up, and then it should go in. So once you have it lined up, it all just snaps into place just like that. So it might take a couple of tries for you to put the motor back in, but as simple as having two pins in the front there that needs to motor to lodge into them. And then at the back here, of course, we're going to put back our bolts that were holding that in place, and those will use a 13mm socket. So get your socket and screw that back on. Simple as that. So you just want to secure everything as you go, otherwise if you forget it, this thing will just jump right off, jump loose, and then you're going to have problems with your washing machine. So you want to make sure that motor is secure. Just make sure. Oh, those are number 10 sockets. That's number 10 socket. So you just want to make sure that all your bolts are secure. Back here. Beautiful. And you want to make sure that you plug this harness back in, otherwise the washing machine won't spin, and then you'll wonder why your washer is not spinning. While you're still here at the back, you probably want to wait a bit, put our spindle back on there. So the spindle is what you want to put back, and you want to make sure you've got your bolt and your nut. So because you'll notice that the shaft is not all the way through, so don't be too alarmed, because when you put this back, the bolt will actually pull the shaft through for you. So you just put it in and then just tighten it up a bit, and that will bring this shaft back into place. So as you tighten that, that shaft will be pulled outwards and it will just nicely line up. So before we put back this belt and tighten up that bolt, we want to make sure that we put the weights back in the front so the washing machine sits, the drum sits properly. Otherwise, like, you'll be trying to tighten it and then it will be at an awkward angle. So we're just going to go right ahead and turn this thing around so that we can have better access to the front. Just remember where you put all your screws so that you can put back the weights. Now, putting back the weights is simple and easy. Just put them back the way you found them, and they go, the left side will not go on the right side and the right side won't go on the left side. You just want to be sure that you're putting everything back the way it should be. So the left one, usually they have markings to say left and the one to say right, but you usually want to just put it in so that the big part goes on the outside. So these writings should be on the outside. Those numbers like DC97A. By the way, that's the part number for that. If yours is broken, you can always order another one by coding that number. It won't be cheap, but it will save you a lot of trouble. All right, so just put that back and then do the same for the left-hand side. Take your time doing all this. Last thing you want is breaking these concrete counterweights. And no, you can't glue them back together. I know they look like plastic, but in there is concrete. Of course, when you're tightening these, you want to make sure that you're not over tightening these because it's going into plastic. So with this washing machine, most washing machines, these things are screwing into plastic. So plastic and metal, I think the metal will win. So make sure you don't over torque it. And just like that. And what I usually like to do is to take a normal wrench and just make sure that it's all nice and secure, because the impact gun might fool you to think that these things are tight when they're not. These are the things that you really don't want shaking around, so make sure these are nice and tight. So something like that, beautiful. While we're at the front, we might as well finish up with the front. First thing we're going to do is reconnect all the pipes that we took off, the drain pipes. So you're going to need a pair of pliers or vice grips to do this next bit. So there's about 3 pipes that we need to put back in there. So there's one here, which we'll start with just a simple clamp. And you can do that one by hand, making sure it's nicely in all the way. Then we've got the pressure chamber and the main drain. So you could also try to do that one by hand. Find the hands give much better access to parts. But if you don't have strong fingers, you can always use a vice grip. Maybe I'll grab a vice grip after all. This is pretty tight. So this is the part you definitely want to be sure that you're nicely putting everything back in, otherwise you get these annoying leaks, which will be from a clamp not sitting properly, pipes not sitting properly. That's all it takes. Just put that that in there. Beautiful. And just remember that this one is a Phillips head screwdriver. You want to make sure that clamp is nicely in, and you do it up. Now you need to remember that to do this one up, you don't do it clockwise, you do it anti-clockwise, and that tightens that. So just make sure you don't get stuck on that point. Next thing, we're going to put back the front panel. To do that, just grab your 3 screws that you took out from the bottom, Phillips head screws, and your panel. And before you put it back in, you want to make sure that you reconnect that door switch harness that we took off before, which is just on the corner here. That way you won't forget about it. So remember, the tabs go at the back, and there's no way you mess it up, because if it's not in the right way, you won't be able to put it in there. To put it in, simply lift it, and to put it in, there's grooves on it, which you sort of lift it up, line it up, and then slide it down. So just need to make sure that it's nicely in the grooves and slides down, and you're halfway there. So that part might take you a bit of time, but you really want to be sure that it's in those plastic grooves, and then it nicely slides down. And it's, when you've got it right, you can see that these holes almost line up, and all you've got are the holes at the bottom to do first, and then you do the top ones. When you're done putting the 3 bottom screws, you want to make sure you put on the 2 top screws, making sure everything nice and secure. It all just lines up nicely there. Beautiful. We're going to put back the seal at the front, so you're going to need to grab your clamping ring that you had, and you need to also grab your flat head screwdriver, because that's also going to help you to put this back on. To put it back on, you need to bring this out first. Bring it out all the way. Until it's all the way through. There'll be a lip on the outer edge of your seal, so just work that around as you go. It might take you a bit of time to do this, but it's worth it, because if you mess it up, the washing machine will start leaking. So just take your time, making sure there's no lumps, that it's just going in nicely. It's pretty easy once you get it going, and you can actually feel where it's not in properly when you use your fingers. So you just keep weaving it in, weaving it in. Beautiful, like that. Just go around making sure that it's nicely in there. This part is where you might need a second person, but you could do it on your own. Just put this around here. The last part you want to put is this part with the spring. So you just keep putting it in, putting it in, putting it in, and the spring goes in last, because the spring can expand. So this is where your flathead screwdriver goes on. So you just expanding it, it's all going in there, and eventually it will all be in there. Yeah, and it's almost there. It's just this bit of a lip that's just left. Just be careful not to damage the seal when you're using your screwdriver to guide it in. As you can see, you can just guide it in with your screwdriver in there. Goes in nicely like that. So you want to make sure that it's nicely in there, making sure that you use your screwdriver to just pry it in there. If you've got a second set of hands, they can help you to properly put this in. That way this thing won't get loose. And you really want to have that spring stuck in there somewhere and not just protruding. Take care not to damage this as you're setting the seal into place, and you should be right, just like that. So that's in there. The next step, we're gonna put back this top bracket, this top mount, this fascia. But before we do that, let's just put that to the side. What you want to do also is make sure that there's no cables and stuff that have come loose when you were just playing around with it. So mine, I've got one here that's loose, so I'm just going to put that back in, because you go to try to start it and then you won't get anything, and then you'll wonder what's going on. So I'll sort that out later. Just put that to the side. Before we put back all that stuff, remember to put back the sensor. So the level sensor, which was just in there. So where you've got that pipe there, that's where that level sensor needs to be. So to put it back, you're simply just making sure that these have nice contact at the back. Those have nice contact at the back. This goes in like so. Sure you plug it in. So you want to be making sure that you plug everything back in where it was, putting any clamps and stuff back in. So if you don't put this back, it will just keep putting water in, and then you'll wonder what's going on. You've forgotten to put back your water level sensor. So that's in. So as far as that's done, that's done. Next thing we're going to do is we want to put back this soap drawer. And this soap drawer is what's responsible for putting water in and mixing the soap and all that. You want to make sure you get that right. So we are going to put that in now. And the first thing you want to do is put this lower bit in. So there's this lower bit that goes at the bottom. So you just line it up and crimp the clamp. This is the part where you really want to be careful that you're putting in everything nicely, because it'll start leaking if it's not in properly. So maybe you want to put the rubber in first. Yeah, just feel around and make sure that it's nice and snug, that it's not going to leak, and then crimp this, and it sort of goes, yeah. Okay, all right. So you need to make sure that it's nicely in there. Take your time on this part because you don't want to get this wrong. Making sure that it's nice and even. That's almost there. Almost there. Yeah, I think that's about it for this one. Beautiful. Let's have a look at the back. Take a quick look. See everything's lined up. Beautiful. And then what you do is you want to put, remember how we took it off, how we put it that way and then took it out that way? So you put it to the left, sorry, to the right, and pushed it back, and then it came out. So this way we're going to do the opposite to put it in. So we're going to sort of push it down, yeah, and then line it up. There's 2 holes at the front here, so 1 and 2, you want to line those up, and so line those up first, and then at the back there is a rubber bit that goes on it that you want to put in. So there's 3 tabs on it. Just midway there, you'll see a tab on the side there. All right, so then you're pushing it in and then pushing it to the left, and in it goes. Remember to put back this hose. So there is a hose here. This one goes into the water dispenser. You want to make sure that you've got that back in there. So as we did with the other one, pull this spring back and then line up the rubber hoses first. When it's in, push the clamp to fully close it, and then that should be right. Everything looks good from here. Then remember to put back, there was a screw here that holds everything in place. So you want to make sure that you've got that screw back in there. Otherwise, this thing will start leaking when it starts shaking around. So put that in and then we'll move on. We're going to put back our display panel, and to do that, there is 2 tabs at the bottom. So one on the left and one on the right. So you want to make sure you line those up first. As you put it down, there'll be aligning holes at the bottom. So you push that in, and as you push it in, you want to make sure that you can use a bit of force, it'll be right. And then it's in, and then just push it back. So it's just sort of taking your time to just push it in, and then it'll be set right from then. And remember to put back the 2 screws that you took out of the soap drawer compartment. That will hold secure your soap drawer, and then it won't be leaking. So make sure you do just that. And don't use too much force tightening these up, because you're drilling into plastic. So make sure you do it right, and then you should be fine. Then remember to put the 3 screws at the top that you took off, and that will sort the washing machine out. So the 3 screws at the top. Beautiful. And another one. So 1, 2, 3. Put them at the top, and then you can put your soap drawer back in now. To put it back, simply push it in, and that's it, it's in. The next stage is we're going to work on the back of the washing machine to put back the shaft, to sort of put back the pulley, attach the pulley to the shaft. You're going to need to take your ratchet and your 17mm socket and obviously put in the shaft and put your washer first, and then we're gonna start tightening this. And as you're tightening this, it's gonna pull the shaft back our way, and that will sort out the shaft in place. You want to have it nice and tight so that this thing spins nicely. So then when you're done with that, you want to take your belt and put the belt back in. So to put the belt back, it's pretty simple. The belt sits first on the motor. So you put it on the motor first, and then first on the motor, and then on the shaft, on the pulley. And you put it halfway on the pulley, and then you turn it anti-clockwise, and as you turn it anti-clockwise, it's going on the pulley. And as you can see, it's nicely in there now. Yeah? Beautiful. That's about it. Then when you're ready, you put back the back panel. So the back panel is pretty easy to put back. Just first put in the top, slide it in, and then the bottom bit, just slide it down, and that will sort it out. So in at the top, and then at the bottom, just push it down. Then put your 4 screws, 1, 2, 3, 4. That should take care of it. And when you're ready, turn the washing machine around and put the top cover back on it. To put the top cover, it's pretty simple. We're just doing the opposite of what we did before. So the top cover goes in pretty simple. So you'd take the top cover and start at the back, line it up, and then just push it forward until it's flush with the front. And then at the back, you've got 2 screws to put in back, 1 and 2, one on the left, one on the right, and that's it. Your washing machine is nicely ready to wash again. Hey, if you found any value in this video, I know it's been long, but that's how it takes to do this. It's a simple procedure, guaranteed to make your washing machine last longer when you fix it. So if you found any value in this video, gently smash that like button. It goes a long way to help this channel for other people to be able to discover this content and fix their washing machines too, like you just did. If you get stuck, if you have any problems with the washing machine after you've done this, leave a comment in the comment section and I'll be more than happy to help. And hey, if you haven't subscribed, consider subscribing, as I do post a lot of videos on how to fix these and many other issues, because you never know what will break down later on your washing machine or on a friend's washing machine. So it will be handy to have me in your inbox. So thanks for tuning in. Till next time, cheers.